All right, everybody, this is Shawana May. I'm filling Omi, and I'm going to show you how to make an easy homemade pie crust from scratch. You're going to need some pre-chilled water. I have more in the freezer. You don't want it to turn into ice. You want it to be very cold, though. You're going to need some very cold chilled butter. You're going to need some flour, a sifter. I also have an old school sifter, but I'm going to use this because it's just a little bit easier. And you're going to need a food processor. Okay, so I have my food processor right here, my trusty dusty food processor. Okay, so what you're going to do, what you're going to want to do here, I'm creating this pie. Oh, and you're going to need a bowl also, and a spoon, and maybe a cup if you might need the cup. This is what I'm going to do my cobbler in. I'm actually doing a I'm trying something new this year. I'm doing a pineapple mango cobbler, and I'll show you the filling before the video is over, and I'll probably end up having to do a separate video for the filling. But everybody asked me how to do cobbler crust when I tell them that I make cobblers. That's the part that most people are afraid of. So this butter isn't as chilled as I wanted it to be, but you want to put your butter in the food processor. This should be okay. This one is a little bit cooler. A little bit more chilled. So you're going to put some butter in the food processor. You can do one stick at a time. That wasn't quite a stick. So I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. Oh, and you're going to need a rolling pin also. Okay. Don't forget the rolling pin. Kind of important. So let's see, that's about a stick of butter right there, a whole stick. I'm going to stick this back in the freezer real quick. All right, then you're going to need some all-purpose flour. I have unbleached all-purpose flour. I like to say 1 stick of butter to 2 cups of flour, okay? I like to sift mine. Some people may not feel that's necessary, especially since you're using a food processor already, but I find that it actually does make the crust a lot more fluffy to sift the flour before you do this. So I will encourage you to sift the flour. And this is actually a tea strainer that I'm using to sift my flour with. It's smaller, a little bit more compact, so it seems to do the job perfectly well for me. And if you were to measure this out, this particular tea sifter or tea steamer, it measures out to a little bit less than a cup. So I'll probably end up doing like 3 of these to equal 2 cups. Okay. Now the key here is to pay attention to the color of your flour as it becomes mixed. You want it to go from, you know, flour is kind of white, right? You want it to go from white to where it looks kind of yellow. So that means the butter has seeped into, you know, all of the flour evenly. And if it's in sections, that's fine, because you're gonna knead it and roll it out, but you want it to look that way as much as possible. So you'll see what I mean here. And I'm gonna speed this up for the sake of time, okay? Because I don't want to be on here forever ever. So we're gonna do another one of these. I'm just gonna pour that in there. So that should be enough for that. So you can always add more flour if you need to. And then I'm just gonna grind it. It helps if the butter is very frozen and it's kind of hard to cut. The second cube of butter that I did was more that way than the other, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about just from this. So I don't know if you can tell around the edges. See there where the flour didn't quite get touched? It's whiter, and in the middle you can see how the flour is kind of like a tinge of yellow. That's what you want, okay? So I'm gonna say for the sake of time that this is done, okay? And this should get me about, that might get me enough to cover the bottom of the skillet. So I'm just gonna show you guys how to do this really quick. You're gonna need a fork. I forgot to mention that. And you're gonna need, like I said, your mixing bowl. So you're gonna take your flour mixture and you're gonna dump it in your mixing bowl. Alright. And I think my battery is gonna be low. So after you do that, you're just going to fold in the cold water until it becomes like a Play-Doh. You don't want it too soft and you don't want it too hard, but you need this water to be cold. The cold water and the cold butter somehow is what causes your crust to mix together really nicely and be fluffier than using. See how that's turning out? It's not too moist and not too dry. I think I got that just right. Okay, and now you're going to take some flour and you're going to flour your surface so that you can roll this out. This is really quick. A really quick video here. And you're going to dump this onto the surface and we're going to roll this out. This might be a little bit more moist than I needed it to be, but I think it'll work just fine once we roll it into the chopping board here, or the rolling board. Okay, and I'm going to set this over here really quick so that we can roll this out. All right, so the objective here is to fit this into the skillet for the bottom layer of the crust. And what I do with my crust is I bake my bottom crust separately. So I will put this in the oven. You know what? I'm going to sprinkle some cinnamon and some nutmeg in here too, because normally I do that. So you can put this on the top also. You don't have to mix it into the dough, but I like to do that sometimes. So, okay. And then you're just going to get that nice and floured up there so you can roll it out. Make sure your surface, I cut a brown paper bag open to do my crust on. I find that it works really well for me, better than the plastic ones. I don't know, for some reason, and then I can just toss it when I'm done, right? So yeah, I think this is gonna be a nice crust. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the whole thing. I think people think everything has to look a certain way or be a certain... let's do that again. We need a little bit more flour in there. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Probably should put some more flour on my board here. So as you know, flour keeps things from sticking too. So there you go. There we go. So just take the flour as you need it. No pun intended. And roll it. Roll it. So I just want this to go on the bottom of my pan. So I'm trying to roll it into a circle. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm making it into as much of a circle as I possibly can, right? And you'll see once I pick it up and put it in there. If I can make it wider, that's great too, which it looks like I might have enough to make it a little bit wider. I make my pies very creatively. Like, I do artwork on top with my crust. So I'm not a big stickler on it looking like the perfect pie crust when it's coming out. Like, so stuff like this, I'll just, you know, add it into the process. Okay, so there we have a crust. I'm going to fold this over and stick it inside. I got a little. So I'm just rolling this over so that I can pick it up and put it into the skillet. Let's see. Let me see a little bit more. Okay, so I'm laying it out in the skillet and I'm going to unfold it in the skillet. And it's crumbling apart, but that's okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so there we have this. Like I said, this is going to be really quick. I'm going to put this in the oven. I got my oven preheated to 375. My top crust is going to be a lot more complete than this. So this is just for the bottom. I should probably do one for the side as well before I put this in the oven. So I'm going to put this in the oven. I'm going to create another crust for the side, and then I'm going to put it in the oven. So this is what that looks like. I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to do this whole process again to make one for the side. So what, in that case, I would basically do the same thing and just trim the edges. Trim the edges once I lay it over the side. Trim the edges with a knife so that it fits, and tuck it under the corner of the edge of the pan so that it, when it bakes, it doesn't cave in. Okay, and I'll show you the finished product when I'm done. All right, so hopefully that helps.